the data which is in terabytes of the data, or the data which is in petabytes of the data, or the data which is in exabytes of the data, right? So this is what we call it's a big data. Then huge amount of the data. Then what kind of the data it is, right? The data can be either it can be a structured data. The structured data in the sense, if you're having the data into a production database, right, which is in the form of rows and columns are there, so we call it as a structured data. And then we have unstructured data. So what is unstructured data? The flat file. So if you have something in a plain text file, so we call it as a unstructured data. So that is flat files is an example for unstructured data. And then we have semi-structured data, right? What is a semi-structured data here? So the semi-structured data in the sense the structure is defined, but it's not mandatory for to define the data, right? So that we call it as a structured data. So the structure is defined, but it's not mandatory to follow the structure. Suppose you take an XML data or the data which is in JSON format, right? So these are an example for the semi-structured data, or you can say loosely structured data. So here, so what is a big data? So the big data is a bulk amount of the data, and the data can be any format. So if somebody will ask you, so what kind of the data we are going to work in Hadoop? Hadoop supports every data format, right? Either it can be CSV file, TSV file, or XML file, XSV file, or it can be any format. Either it can be a row format, or it's in a column format, or it's a Avro data, it's a Parquet data, right? So it should be the data. So big data supports any kind of the data, right? So we can able to work with the structured as well as unstructured as well as semi-structured data. So this is what we call it as a the big data. So then what we are going to do with the big data, right? See here, I'm going to give you the three examples here. It's a very basic simple example. So here we have some telecom domain, right? So from this telecom domain, the function people who's involved in the data science team, so they created some new plan. Think that, so there are the two types of users are there, two users, one is X and other user is a Y. Okay, so then X is a user who messages every day and Y is a user who travels very frequently. Okay, then the team here, the functional team has created a new plan, right? So the plan related to messaging. Then what you have to do now? Okay, fine. So you have created some best and optimized plan. Then you need to suggest it to the users. So then you suggested this messaging plan to user Y. In this case, who is going to get the benefit? No one. Either the user Y is not going to get the use that one, as well as the your business won't get the benefit. But if you suggest this messaging plan to the user X, then X is going to use that one. He's going to buy that. So X is will get the advantage with the plan, as well as the business will get the advantage, right? So this is a very basic thing that everybody knows this one. But here, how you have to identify the requirements of each individual user. You take a Vodafone, which is in a telecom, which is having some millions of users around the world, right? If you specifically for each country, so they have the millions of users are there. Then how you are going to identify the each individual requirements of each individual user? How you should know that what actually Ajay is expecting from me, right? So identifying. So what we will do now, so the telecom domain, they used to collect, they'll collect the data of every user. So which data they'll collect? So the user from where he resides and how many voice calls, how many STD calls is missing, using is in a GPRS area, is browsing in 3G, is traveling between the cities, then what are the cities he visited. So they are trying to collect all the data. Then collecting millions users of that much of millions of users data, think that how much the data becomes, right? So obviously your data size grows bigger. And can you expect the data to be in a structured format in that case? No, the data is going to be completely unstructured. Now the we are taking that much of the data, and I'm going to query the data such a way that I can able to identify the individual requirements of each and every user, right? That means in this way this business can provide a personalized, right, requirement and features to their users. Suppose the another example, it's suppose we are using iPhone 6 and we are playing with some application, so at some point of time my mobile got stuck up. Then it immediately will send a message, you want to send this error message to the manufacturer. You work with the laptop, you got stuck up, right? So it will ask you, you want to send error report to the manufacturer? Yes, right. So now see here, for this iPhone 6 around the world, how many users are using, then how many mobiles will get stuck up or getting the sending the message to the manufacturer, right? So here when you are using manufacturing client, who is sending these messages? Your mobile will send the feedback or error reports to the manufacturer. That is, it is the data generated by the machine, right, not the user data. So this is the data generated by the machines. Now so you have to get all the errors from the different machines. Now you should be able to identify and you should be able to analyze that, so what are the issues which are already facing, and whenever you're coming with a new release or new update, then you can able to bug fix the new issues which are generated by the applications or some of the reasons into the mobile, right? So now how much error messages or how much machine data a manufacturing client will get, then identifying that much of the data and then providing the solutions before coming to the next update, so the doing the bug fix, right? So this is what the best thing which can be done with the big data analytics, right? I'll take one simple and easy example here. It's an e-commerce based client. So here I use Amazon, right? So now see here what how this big data analytics will get benefit here. So when the client Amazon, right, so what they will do, so they're having their regular data processing is there. So the regular data processing in the sense, right, their architecture, project architecture, right, is there. Apart from that, so for the people who's involved in the big data analytics, so they are going to create a file, right? So they are going to create a file with a name prod underscore info.txt is a file, right? So and in this file they're giving the information like, so the username and the product name which the user visited and the time when the user visited the product, right? So username, product name and the time. So now here see Ajay is a user who visited some iPhone 6 and the sometime he visited the product, right? So there's something now like this, whenever a user visits a product, so the username and the product name which the user visited and the time when he visited will be written to this file. Okay, so now is there any limit that only user has to visit the product this many number of times? No, a user can visit the product any number of times. So whenever a user visit a product, his name written to the data set, right? They are writing this here. So Ajay is a user, so again he visited iPhone 6 and he visited some in a different time. So this is going to be the OLAP, end of the day batch processing, right? So today's data is going to be analyzed at the end of the day. So this data is going to be the OLAP. So now the today's they have collected the data and they wrote in a file with the file name prod underscore info.txt, and right. So we got this file. Now your manager, right, call, yeah, Mr. Hi Siddharth, right? So your manager call you, right? You, hi Rohit. Yeah, hi Siddharth. So your manager, call, yeah, Mr. My dear Hadoop developer, Rohit, you take this data, prodinfo.txt, and the seller, right, who is the seller wants to know that how many users visited iPhone 6 today. This is the seller query. So he sent a mail to your manager, then your manager called you and asked, try to find out how many users visited iPhone 6 today. Then what you have to do, right? So for where product name equal to iPhone 6, count the username, right? In this case, so this is a text file, and suppose Ajay visited iPhone 6 100 times in the day, right? Total he visited the product 100 times. That is, his name is written to the dataset 100 times. When, right, when you're counting the total number of users, can you count Ajay as 100 users or only one user, even though a username exists multiple times, right? Even though Ajay name exists multiple times in the dataset, we should consider him as only the one user, right? So this is what we call big data analytics. Suppose the seller raised another query, right? Suppose user purchase the products. So how many right times each user visited the product before purchase, right? So the next query he raised, how many times each user visits the product. Suppose consider Ajay purchased the product at the end of the day sometime. So now you have to consider query the data, right? Count how many times Ajay visited. So Ajay visited the product 100 times. So in the first run, I'm taking Ajay as a one user. In the second run, I'm taking Ajay as 100 users. But so being a SQL programmer, Siddhartha, what you says, Ajay, can we write a distinct here? Right. Yes, we have a distinct keyword in SQL, but here your data is in a plain text file. Right. I'm not going to analyze the data into the DBMS. I'm going to analyze the data which is in a plain text file. Right. So we are taking the data which is in a plain text file, which is each field is separated by some space, and I'm querying the data such a way that I'm going to retrieve this one. So this is what we call it a big data analytics. So what is the benefit here when a client or a business is going to implement the big data analytics? Right. Actually, the seller wants to know that. So what will be the sales for the next week? Right. So now they call, yes, Siddhar, you take the data. So today's data, this is yesterday's data. So you take this entire week's data and please identify what will be the sales for the next week. What will be the sales for the next month. So this is what we call it as a predictive analysis. Right. So we are going to call it as a predictive analysis, so that we are going to identify the sales in the next week or the sales which comes into the next month, right? So that's what we call it as a predictive analysis. So now, so what is the point here? So this is the data is going to be the big data, and what we are going to do with the big data? So we are taking the big data and we are running some big data analytics, right? So we are going to run some big data analytics on the big data. That is what is running the big data analytics. So big data analytics, like, it is a process of applying the advanced analytics, the way how we are going to query the data, right? So the way how we are trying to retrieve the data from a data set, right? So this is a process of applying advanced analytics, right? So I wrote some queries on the data, then I have generated some output. But how can I give this output directly to my customer? Right? I need to generate a beautiful representation, or I need to generate the reports. That means I need to visualize the data, right? So we have the different visualization techniques are there. So I'm taking the big data, some bulk amount of the data, I'm running big data analytics. So with that one, I'm going to apply the advanced analytics and the data, and then I'm going to apply some visualization techniques, so that a business or a client can able to identify can able to identify and predict the changes. A client or a business going to get take a better business decisions when we are going to apply the big data analytics and the big data. So what are the advantages? A client or a business can able to take a better business decisions. You can able to predict and you can able to identify the changes. You can able to identify the new opportunities. You can able to identify the behavior of your users. Right? It's a behavioral analysis. We can see if you take Amazon, right? So they use a Hadoop to identify the product recommendations, the recommendations based upon the users, the recommendation based upon the product which you already purchased, or recommendations based upon the products which you browsed on Amazon, right? So to identify that, so they are using Hadoop. So like this, each client will have the specific requirements on the data, so that they'll run the big data analytics. So finally, every business will achieve right a better business decisions, and a predict, and they can able to identify the changes, and they can able to identify the new opportunities. So this is what we call is a big data analytics, right? So applying this big data analytics and the big data, so which we are going to learn, right? So and we call it as a big data analytics. And see, this is the way how we are going to query the data, right? So but here my data is not in a SQL, my data is in a plain text file data. So I'm going to query the data like this by targeting the data into the data set.
Okay.
Run this. What are the frameworks or the applications or the softwares available in the market to work with the big data? See here, to work with the big data analytics, right? To work the big data analytics, right? So you can use SAP HANA, okay, or you can use Oracle XData, or you can use Teradata, or you can use Apache Hadoop, right? So these are the different programming tools where we are going to apply the big data analytics, right? You can use SAP HANA, or you can use Oracle XData, or the Teradata, or Hadoop from the Apache, where we are going to work the big data analytics. Then why there are the heavy implementation on the Apache Hadoop? Why every client is trying to implement Hadoop with the big data, right? So now suppose if your client is trying to implement SAP HANA, right? So in that case, what we need to implement SAP HANA, right? You need to buy the hardware to store the data, and you know that how much HANA servers are costly, right? So you need to invest much on the hardware. Just a second. Right? So you can use SAP HANA, right? So when you are using SAP HANA, that's you need to buy the SAP HANA hardware. Then you have to buy the application engine, which is a programming part. Then you have to buy the license. Then you have to pay for the support, right? So we know that how SAP HANA is costlier, right? So the same thing now, if you use Oracle from Exadata, you need to have hardware infrastructure. Then you need to buy the Oracle appliances to work with, and you have to buy the license and pay for the support, right? It's same thing for the Teradata. Then why Hadoop? Why there is a heavy demand, right? Why every client preferably try to implement Hadoop? Because Hadoop supports commodity hardware. Okay, Hadoop supports commodity hardware. So what is a commodity hardware? Right, commodity hardware in the sense, suppose if your client is looking to implement the Hadoop for their project, he have the two options, right? He can choose a infrastructure to configure the Hadoop cluster, or he don't want to go with infrastructure, right? We have given the two choices. One is go with infrastructure and no infrastructure. So if a client wants to go with a specific his own infrastructure, again he can use his existing infrastructure to configure, right? That is, a client have an option. He can use existing infrastructure, right? You can use, or you can buy the new hardware to configure the Hadoop cluster. You can use new infrastructure. When suppose if you're trying to use the new infrastructure, we suggest that you could go and buy the low end inexpensive storage machines. We are not suggesting you to buy the high-end machines. You go and buy a machine which is less priced. Yes, if it is a less price, it goes down. Yeah, let it goes down, right? But it doesn't make any sense in your data processing. So when your client is trying to buy the new infrastructure, right, we Hadoop suggests you go and buy the low priced, right, inexpensive storage machines to store the data. If you want to use existing infrastructure, so whatever the infrastructure you are having, the same infrastructure you can able to configure the Hadoop, so you don't need to buy. Or if you are trying to buy the infrastructure, yes, you can buy. So you go and buy the low price inexpensive storage machines. Suppose you are not looking for the infrastructure, yes, we can run Hadoop in a cloud. We can run Hadoop in a cloud. So what we have to do now, just rent the storage, right? Then dump all your data there and then start processing it. That's it, right? So that is when, if you don't want to go with the no infrastructure. So here you can see Amazon web AWS, right? So you can use Amazon S3 server is available, which is giving the cloud services, Amazon EC2 cluster, right? Amazon AW web services. So there are many servers are available right now. We know that big IBM is also came into the cloud in the month of January, right? So we have Google cloud services are available, right? So there are so many cloud services are available. So you have to rent the storage, then just dump your data and start processing it. So this is, so what is the point here is when a client are trying to implement the Hadoop, right? We can run Hadoop as a service, right? We can run Hadoop as a service. When you run Hadoop as a service, we can integrate Hadoop into anywhere, right? So that is, even we can run Hadoop in a SAP HANA server, we can run Hadoop in a Teradata, we can run Hadoop in a Oracle Exadata, right? Wherever you want, right? We can able to integrate Hadoop. So that is the one best advantage with the Hadoop. We can run Hadoop as a service. When we can run it as a service, we can able to integrate into any infrastructure, we can able to integrate into any framework. So that is the advantage with the Hadoop. So when you are using the Hadoop, right? Right, so when you're trying to buy the application, then so it's always suggest you to go with the commodity hardware. So then if you're using existing infrastructure to configure Hadoop cluster, so your implementation cost is zero, right? So generally, so if you're trying to implement something for a client, right? So what are the two important things for a client? A client always talks about the cost. The main concern for a client is the cost, and second one is high availability. It should drop and run 24/7, right? So now when it is coming to the cost, right? So then if you are using the existing infrastructure, so your implementation cost is almost zero, right? This is about the Hadoop hardware which we are going to use. Then the programming, the application engine, right? So what we use here, right? So for the programming in a Hadoop, right? So you can use C language, which is free and open source. You can use C++, which is free and open source. You can use Java, which is free and open source. You can use Python, which is free and open source. Right, so you don't need to buy the license for the application engine here. So these are all the open source tools. Moreover, if you say, yeah, Ajay, I'm new to the programming, so I don't know much programming skills in these programming languages, then the Hadoop from the Apache is providing the two new programming languages, that is Hive and other one is a Pig, right? So we have a Hive is there, right? So we can query the data using a Hive and we can process the data using a Pig, right? Both Hive and Pig. So which are again free and open source tools where we are going to retrieve or process the data with these tools, right? So these are the programming languages we use as part of the querying the data, right? Application engine. So then license. Who will provide the license here? Right? The Apache will provide the license. How much cost it here? It's a zero, right? That is, it's a free, and moreover, this is an open source tool. Okay, so the license provider is Apache, and it is free, and moreover, it is an open source tool. Then the support, right? So but Apache won't give it the support, so there is no support if you use Hadoop from the Apache. Then how to get the support? So you have different people are available over the different communities, so you have to approach the forums and the communities. So you have to, mail lists are there, so just you need to get your issue resolved by concerning the people, that's it. So but a direct support from the Apache is not available. Then in this case, yeah, because your client is having a dedicated Hadoop cluster is there, so he recruited a separate developer team is there, admin team is there, right? So then, so they are looking somebody to configure the Hadoop cluster. So the client is looking someone to support in a day-to-day issues are there, right? So we are looking a dedicated support. In this case, if you are looking to get the support on the Hadoop, then you have to buy the Hadoop. From where you have to buy the Hadoop? You have to buy the Hadoop from the vendors, or we call them as Hadoop distributors, right? We call them as a Hadoop distributors. Then who are they? So we can use Hadoop from the Cloudera. So the Hadoop is available from the Cloudera. They are giving Hadoop in the form of CDH. The environment for the Hadoop, they are giving as a CDH. The recent version is 5.7. And other one is Hortonworks. Okay, so they are giving Hadoop in the form of HTTP, Hortonworks Data Platform. The version which we are using is recent version is 2.4, and there is another distribution, that is Mapper. They are giving Hadoop in the form of 3 different versions: M3, M4, M5. It's a Hadoop from the MapR. So these are mainly into the Hadoop business. The first in the market, Cloudera, captured more number of clients. The if you are looking for the cost, so Hortonworks is a little bit less price compared with the Cloudera. So right, more implementations are taking in the Hortonworks right now. And if you're looking a strong programming, it a complete 100% high availability, so then you can use Hadoop from the MapR. Apart from these, right, these are the mainly into the Hadoop business. Apart from this, we have Hadoop is available from the Intel. So even see in the last year, so I am personally involved to Teradata to Hadoop migration projects, because most of the Teradata clients, they are migrating to Hadoop. So then what they did, Teradata come with their own Hadoop, right? They released in the month of September 2015. So we have a Teradata Hadoop is available. So that is Hadoop from the Teradata. To retain their customers, they have come up with their own Hadoop. So we have Hadoop is available from Intel, Teradata. So as of now, Microsoft, they tied up with the Hortonworks. They are saying from long days they are coming to release their own distribution, but it's not yet happened. But right now they are working for their Windows Azure platform for Hortonworks. Microsoft is tied up with the Hortonworks for their Windows Azure platform. Right. Apart from that, IBM is having their own Hadoop. Right. So, but these are the mainly into the Hadoop business: Cloudera, Hortonworks, and MapR. In my training, I'll use both Cloudera and Hortonworks, both same. Right. So generally people may get a confusion here. So do we need to learn here separately? So Hadoop is different, Hadoop in a Cloudera is different. No, actually, if I say that the movie is the same, but the theaters which we are playing is the different. So the movie here we are playing is Hadoop. So the recent version of Hadoop is 2.7, right? That is Apache Hadoop. Now either it's a Cloudera or it's a Hortonworks or it's a MapR. We are using only the Hadoop 2.7. Okay, we are using Hadoop from the Apache. That's what the movie which we are playing is the same, but the theaters are the different. Then where the difference comes? The difference comes in the pricing, the difference comes in the features, the difference comes in the environment, right? Here the difference comes. Apart from that, the actual movie, how we are going to store the data, how we are going to query the data, that is how we are passing or retrieving the data. So it's everything is same, right? So it's either it's a Hadoop in a Cloudera or a Hortonworks or a MapR. We are using the same Hadoop from the Apache. The movie is the same, but the theaters where we are playing is different. It's available in all the Hadoop distributions. We are using Hadoop 2.7, the recent one. Okay, so this is the Hadoop distribution. So now see, this is the, now we can see here it's a Cloudera's Hadoop environment. So this environment is provided by the Cloudera. So if you take a terminal, if I write here Hadoop space version, press enter. Now see here, I am using Hadoop version 2.6.0 in a Cloudera's version CDH 5.4.0, right? So now this is the environment, the complete this environment is provided by the Cloudera. So they give ready to configure Hadoop environment, right? So this is the Cloudera's Hadoop environment. So now what I'm using here, Hadoop 2.60, either it's Cloudera or Hortonworks or a MapR, the same application engine. Either you can use C++, Java or Hive and Pig to process your data, right? So this is what we use. So most of my training, I use a Cloudera and I'll use Hortonworks. I'll teach you in the Cloudera environment, and I'll suggest you to go through the Hortonworks certification. I'll give you the Hortonworks certification training program. So whatever the examples which you are taking, you will get into the Hortonworks certification, right? So I'll train you to write the Hortonworks certification. Okay, Hadoop is a distributed data processing system which supports a concept called just bunch of disks. See here, now, so to configure the Hadoop cluster, we need some disks. So we'll take the disks like this, some disk 1, disk 2, so disk 3, some disk 4, disk 5. Then your sysadmin, network admin, configure these disks as a node. So a node may contain one disk or multiple disks. So here node 1 contains 2 disks, or you can configure in each node 1 disk, right? So that is we configure it as a nodes. Okay, so this is a disk 1, disk 2, disk 3, disk 4, disk 5. So I'm using the 4 disks. Generally what we'll do in a disk, we'll take a one disk like this hard disk, or you can say it's an individual computer. Then we have to install operating system. Then you can configure either Windows or a Linux here, but we preferably use Linux here. So when you install the Linux in the machine, so you will get a Linux file system, correct? So when you install a Linux in this disk, so you will get a Linux file system, right? So we have Linux file system. Now in the same disk I have installed Hadoop. So when we install Hadoop, we'll get here Hadoop file system. That is, now in the same disk we are having the two file systems. One is a Linux file system and other one is a Hadoop file system. Right, so this is Hadoop file system, HDFS. Right, in each disk two file systems are available. One is a Linux file system and other one is a Hadoop file system. So this is what we call is a one disk. Now all the disks are configured like this. So in each disk we'll have a local file system as well as Hadoop file system. Local file system is like the file system which is configured by the Hadoop. The Hadoop file system which is configured by the which comes with the Hadoop installation, and the local file system which comes with the operating system. So in each disk we'll have the two file systems are available, right? Now, so we have a bunch of disks like this. Now what we are going to do, as the definition, the data which we are going to process is going to be distributed. So here my input to data is available in a file with the name prod_info.txt, right? So this is my input file, right? Consider the file size is 1000 MB. It's a 1 GB file, right? So now what I want to do is I want to write this file to the Hadoop cluster. So I need to run some queries, I need to process the data, or I need to run some analytics on this file. So what I have to do, I have to copy this file into the Hadoop cluster, right? So when I'm going to write this file into the Hadoop cluster, this file, the content in this file is going to be divided, that's a distributed, or you can say divided as a small size of chunks, right? So that is the input data which we are going to write is divided as a small size of chunks. We call these chunks as blocks, right? So what we call these chunks as a blocks. Then you can ask me the question, so what is the small size means how much? Generally when you install Hadoop, we'll get one file, configuration file with the name hdfs-site.xml. so in this configuration file we have a one property, that is dfs dot, we have a property that is dfs dot block, right? So this will give you the block size. So it can be like 64 MB or it can be 128 MB. So the default one is 128 MB, or it can be 256 MB, or it can be 512 MB. So this is the block size. So which you specified here, that many number of blocks are going to be created. That is, my file size is how much? 1000 MB, right? And what is the block size for in the Hadoop cluster? Consider here I am taking 64 MB, that is 64 MB. Then how many blocks are going to be created? 15.16, that is total 16 blocks are going to be created, correct? Clear here, Rohit and Sid? So did I making any confusion?
No.
Right. So so the input data which we are going to write here into the Hadoop cluster, so before writing it is divided as a small size of chunks, we are calling it as a block size. Then what is a small size means? So which is really done the property in the configuration file. So the configuration file is hdfs-site.xml, which comes with the Hadoop installation. Then at the time of cluster planning, your admin will edit this based upon your cluster capacity. So they will specify one block size. So it can be 64 or 128 MB. So in the newest version, the default one is a 128 MB, right? So to make the mathematics simple, I took here the 64 MB. So now this is the my input file size, and that is a block size. So there are 16 blocks are going to be created. Okay, then when we discuss about the commodity hardware, we are using commodity hardware, that is low priced machines, correct? We can clearly differentiate between an iPhone 6 and a Huawei mobile, right? iPhone 6 heavy price which comes over the years, right? Where is some Lenovo, it's a low price mobile, but the lifetime is very less, correct? The same here, we are using commodity hardware, low priced machine, that is which goes down. Then if it is goes down, we should able to retrieve the data, right? So that every block which we are going to create, I'm going to replicate it. So in the same configuration file, I'm having a property dfs.replication, which is default set to 3. That is every block is going to replicate 3 times. That is I'm having the 16 blocks are there. So block 1, so it is replicated 3 times, like block 1, block 1, block 1. Then block 2 is there, so it is replicated 2 times, block 2, block 2, block 2. So last block is block 16, so replicated 3 times. So like this, all input data is divided as a blocks, the blocks are replicated. Now these replicated blocks are distributed to this bunch of disks. How it is replicated? It is replicated such a way that, so here block 1 is available here. So how many block 1s are available? 3. So one block 1 will be placed here, another block 1 placed here, and another block 1 placed here, right? So one block 2 is available here, then one block 2 is available here, right? One block 2 is available here. Like this, the blocks are equally replicated to all the bunch of disks, so that if this particular data node goes down, if this disk goes down, then we can retrieve the block 1 from the another data node. If this both goes down, we can retrieve block 1 from the fifth data node. So like this is advantage with the replicated blocks. So that is, it's simple. The input data is going to be distributed as a blocks, and the blocks are replicated. Then the replicated blocks are distributed to the bunch of disks, which we call it as a nodes. Now see here, so but actually what this block 1, block 2, block 16 contains, the data, whatever the data in this file prod_info.txt, the data is available in these 16 blocks, right? So where we place the blocks into these nodes, so that we are calling these nodes as a data nodes. We are calling it as a data nodes. So what data node contains? Data node contains the data, the actual data which we are going to process. So this actual data in the form of blocks, right? So this we call it as a data nodes. So what data node contains? The actual data which in the form of blocks are written to these data nodes, right? Now okay, so like this I'm going to write multiple files to the Hadoop cluster. So I wrote prod info, then I let prod visit, I let prod purchase. So I'm going to write multiple files to the this bunch of these nodes. Then how to identify? So where you are going to write which file, right? We need some index needed to locate the files, right? So for that I'm taking another node which I'm calling it as a master node or index node, or we call it as a name node. I'll call it as a name node. So what this name node contains? Name node contains index of the data. It contains index of the data. That is, suppose what I did here. So in this data node, I have copied this file to this location. So in a directory user, in a directory Ajay, so in a directory prod. So I have created a file that is prod_info.txt, right? So this is a file which I'm trying to write. Now this path, right? So this path as a reference written into the name node, and the content of the prod_info is written into the data nodes as a blocks. So now what name node contains? Now the name node contains a path where this prod_info.txt file is available. So this file is available in a Hadoop cluster, in a Hadoop file system, where it is available under user Ajay under prod_info. So this will be written into the name node. So what a name node contains? Name node contains index of the data in a data node. Name node contains reference of the data in a data nodes. Our name node contains a tree kind of structure of the data in a data node. What is the directory and what are the subdirectory? What are the files in the directory? That path is written to the name node, and all these data nodes are connected to a name node, right? So now what Hadoop contains? Hadoop contains one name node and multiple data nodes. So actual data is written to the data nodes, and the reference always written to a name node. When user enters a query, when user runs a program, then that is in a terminal, in a client or in an API, he wrote this query, select count star from the table name, press enter. So this is going to be the job. So when a client runs a program, then we have a job tracker is available, right? Job tracker is available in the place where name node is available in the same machine. So we have job tracker is available. So what is a job tracker? Job tracker is a process which will take the request from the client. So we use a job tracker. So what this job tracker will do? So right, so now we store the data. Now to process the data, to execute the job, so first user writes a query, then he enters the query, then the job tracker comes into the picture. So it goes to the client and it will take the request from the client, right? After that, so it has to locate the data in a data nodes. So whatever the data which the client is looking for, or whatever the job which is client user is trying to run is available in which file, so that will be written into the name node, correct? So first job tracker will take the request from the client. Job tracker will take the request from the client, then it goes to the name node to locate the data. So that is the blocks which are related to this prod underscore info is available in which data nodes. That job tracker locates into the name node, then it comes to that particular data node where the blocks are available. Now see here the block 1 is available, right? So then the job tracker will assign this job to a task tracker. So in every data node we have a task tracker is available. So task tracker is, again, it is a process, right? So in every data node we have a task tracker is available. Okay, so then what the job tracker will do? Job tracker will take the request from the client and locate the data in a name node where it is available in the data nodes. Then it comes to that particular data node and job tracker assign this job to the task tracker. Job tracker assign this job to the task tracker. Then what task tracker will do now? Task tracker execute the job on this block. Then once the job is completed, task tracker will give the output back to the client. Job tracker will submit output back to the client, right? So how the see here now how the data processing takes place. Job processing. So the job executed by the query taken by the job tracker goes to the name node, and in the name node it will locate the blocks where it is available. Then it comes to that particular data node, and in each data node we have a task tracker is available. Then the job tracker will assign the job to the task tracker. Now task tracker will execute the job. Now as long as task tracker is running the job, it says, hey job tracker, please wait, I am running the job. So task tracker will send the heartbeats, I am working, please wait, I am working, please wait. So as long as it is working with a job, task tracker will send the heartbeats to the job tracker. So now job tracker will wait till the task tracker complete the job. Once the task tracker complete the job, then the job tracker will give the output back to the client. Suppose here the task tracker completed the task 80%, it goes down. This particular data node goes down. Then the task tracker goes unavailable. If it is unavailable, task tracker will stop sending the heartbeats, right? It won't send, I'm working, please. So when task tracker will stop sending the heartbeats, job tracker thinks that, okay, this particular task tracker is down, this data node is down. Then job tracker goes to another data node where same blocks are available, right? So in each data node we have a task tracker is available. Then again job tracker assign this job to the task tracker. Okay, so then the task tracker will run the job on this block 1. So as long as task tracker is running the job, it will send the heartbeats to the job tracker, and the job tracker is monitoring the task tracker. Once the task tracker complete the job, task tracker submit the output to the job tracker. Then the job tracker submits the output to the client. So this is how the data processing takes place. Clear, Rohit and Sid?
Yeah, Jay.
Okay, so here what is the disadvantage here? Right now, can we able to run the multi-parallel processing here? See, job tracker is waiting till the job 1 completed, so that it is cannot able to take the second request from the client. One thing. Suppose, okay, so if your job tracker goes down, sorry, if the data node goes down, so we have the blocks available. Then if metadata goes down, then how you locate the files into the data node? Because you don't have the index is available, so you don't have the name node is available, so we are unable to locate the data. See, this is important. Remember, always in a Hadoop cluster, the reason is the name node. So name node is the, in a Hadoop cluster, name node is the single point of failure. Only the reason to Hadoop cluster is down is name node, right? It's the reason, it is a single reason for the cluster is down. So if the name node goes down, then it goes down, right? So what we are doing, so here alternate, we are taking another name node and we call it as a secondary name node. We call it as a secondary name node. Then what we are doing, so whatever we are writing to the name node, the snapshot we are writing into the secondary name node. Okay, so what secondary name node contains? The snapshot of the primary name node. Whatever the image you wrote here, we are writing into the secondary name node. That is in a specific interval. So whenever the checkpoint occurs, that is a checkpoint occurs at 10:30, right? Consider, so the checkpoint occurred at 10:30. So then, so whatever you are having in the name node will be written to the secondary name node. Then, so next checkpoint time is 11:30. Right, suppose, but here your data node, your name node goes down at 10:45. Then, so whatever the data which you wrote between 10:30 and 10:45 is not available, right? So because you have updated data at the 10:30 in the secondary name node, and the next update time is 11:30. So whatever the data you wrote between 10:30 to 10:45 is available in this name node, but it's not taken back up into secondary name node. So during this time, if a name node goes down, then we are losing some point of the data, right? Okay, so what are the issues here in this architecture? We can see the two things. One is high availability, right? At some point of time we are going to lose the data, and second one, the parallel processing is not taking the place, right? So the job tracker always runs only one job at a time, right? So this is what we call Hadoop with a map reduce. When we use Hadoop with a map reduce, right, so this is generally we used to have like Hadoop before 2.0, right? So what we used to have Hadoop before 2.0, so we have Hadoop in the form of master and slave, right? So what are the masters here? What are the master nodes? So we configure the name node as a master node. So what name node contains? Name node contains index of the data in, or you can say reference of the data in data nodes. So this is written into the name node, right? We have a job tracker is available, right? So what is job tracker will do? Job processing can be done by job tracker, right? So we have a secondary name node is available, right? What secondary name node contains? The snapshot image of primary name node is written to the secondary name node, right? So these are all Hadoop, the version before 2.0, right? So these are the masters. And what are the slaves we configured? In a slaves, right? So we have the data nodes available, right? So what the data node contains? The actual data written to the data nodes, right? And we have a task trackers available, right? So what the data nodes, right? So the actual data which we are going to process will be written to the data nodes, and the job execution job execution done by the task tracker, right? So this is what we have Hadoop before 2.0. We call it as Hadoop process, Hadoop daemons, Okay, so now what is the issues here? Two things. One is parallel processing not taking place. So here parallel processing not taking place and high availability. So at some point of time we are going to lose the data. Right. So to avoid these issues from Hadoop 2.0, from Hadoop 2.0 onwards, right? So we have YARN, that is where we are storing the data in SDFS and we are passing the data with a YARN.
So Ajay, one question.
Yes. Okay. So instead of the job tracker, we are using resource manager. So resource manager will have the two things. It will have a resource manager and it is a application master. Will have the two processes it will run. Application master, and instead of the task tracker we use a node manager. Okay, now see here, if you see this diagram, right? So how many jobs job tracker is performing? Taking the request from the client, then locating the data into the name node, navigating to the data nodes and locating the blocks, assigning the job, monitoring the task tracker, then getting the output from the task tracker if the job successful, otherwise going to another data node and it will assign the job to another task tracker. Then it has to monitor the task tracker, it has to get the output from the task tracker, then it has to submit back to the client. One, it's doing this many number of things. So then Hadoop 2.0 onwards, we are not instead of the job tracker we are using a resource manager. In the sense, it's simple thing. So previously it is only one employee. Right now we same job we distributed to the two people. One is a resource manager and other one is a application master. Now see here in a yard what we are going to do. First we have a resource manager is available, right? So what we have a resource manager RM. Now the resource manager, a second, let me take a snapshot image. Okay, now see here what we are using. We are using resource manager here, right? It's the same job done by the job tracker, but it will be given to the two employees, two process. One is a resource manager. Now what resource manager will do? Resource manager will take the request from the client. Okay, then it locates the blocks, then it comes to the data node, it comes to the data node, and in the each data node it will create the resources to run the job. Okay, and resource manager will assign this job to the application master. It says that, yeah, Mr. Application Master, so I have assigned the resources here, you run the job. Resource manager assign the job to the application master, then application master is monitoring the job, right? So while application master is monitoring the job, resource manager can able to take the second request from the client, right? Suppose see here, I'm Ajay, I'm working as a resource manager, and Siddharth, you are a application master. Then now what I'll do, I'm a resource manager. So first I'll take the request from the client, then I'll go to the data node, then I'll create the resources, and I'm calling you. Yes, you're a application master. Now you just monitor this job. So now you're busy with working this job one. When you're working with this job, so I can able to take the second request from the client. So now as a resource manager, I'll take the second request from the client, then I'll create the memory in the data nodes and I'll create the resources. Then I'll assign, yeah, Mr. Application Master, you're Siddharth, you're an application master. Now you take the you monitor the second job. Now you have to finish job one, then you come to job two. You're busy with the monitoring the job. So during this time, as a resource manager, I can able to take the third request from the client, right? So like this, we are getting the parallel passing. So right, so we can resource manager will take request from the client, and the application master will always monitor the job, and the job is executed by the node manager, right? So don't get confused. Job executed by the node manager. So in each data node, now we use a node manager is a one process, right? So the node manager will execute the job here, right? and the job is monitored by the application master, and the job accepted by the resource manager. I'll repeat, resource manager will take the request from the client, locate the data into the data nodes, then it will assign the job to the node manager. Node manager is executing the job. Then this job is monitored by the application master. So while application master is monitoring the job, resource manager will goes to the client, will take the second request, and it will create a memory resources, and it will assign the node manager to run the job, and application master will monitor the job, right? So this is how we are going to work in a Hadoop 2.0 onwards. So we call it as a yarn. So what yarn will have as a master node, right here in the master, we use resource manager. So instead of the job tracker, we use a resource manager plus application master together, right? So now parallel processing is possible. Can we able to run multiple jobs here? Yes, right? The parallel processing takes place here.
Application manager, can it monitor 3 jobs at one time?
Yes.
Like
yeah, it can monitor the multiple jobs because each monitor will have specific containers now, right? We are not using the common pool of the data. Now,
okay.
It will create some memory for the job 1 container, memory container for the job 2, memory container for the job 3. Now, 3 jobs are running by the 3 node managers in the 3 different data nodes. That's it. That works perfectly. Now, application master only monitoring the job. During this time, resource manager will create more memory jobs. More jobs, create more, take the request from the clients and will create the resources. As long as resources are available, resource manager will take the job. So if there are no resources available, it will throw the error. It doesn't have the resource available.
Okay.
Okay. So
but
now
there be a kind of like a limit application manager will have, or is it dependent on hardware, or how?
yeah, because when we configure the yarn, but these are the services. These are the services, right? It's a one service which runs in the background. So if you invoke yarn, then resource manager and node manager and application master service are available, which runs the job. Suppose if you started only the MapReduce, then we have a job tracker is one service is available, and task tracker is service. Here these are all the services. Name node is a one service, one program, you can say. The job tracker is a one service. They are the applications. Okay. So what we call it as a Hadoop daemons, or we can say Hadoop processes, right? Okay, so in like this we are going to achieve the parallel processing. The second one is high availability. So now Hadoop 2.0 onwards, what we are taking one more node, extra node apart from the name node. So we are not giving the priority to the secondary name node, it's optional now. So we'll take one more node here. Okay, and then whatever you are writing here, whatever you are writing the name node, we also write into here. That is 2 writes takes place now. Okay, at the same time, how many writes? 2 writes. Every write here will also written to the, say, this node, right? We call it as a HA node, high availability node. So in the HA node, what I'm going to do is, whatever I'm writing into the name node, the same thing I'm writing into the HA node. So if the name node goes down, so we have HA node is available. So your admin, right? So what admin will do? Admin will configure a concept like auto fencing. When auto fencing is enabled, if this name node goes down, obviously the second one will up and run. So it will give you the 0 downtime, right? So that node we call it as a HA node. And what we are doing, we are writing the 2 writes. Every write we are writing the name node. The same we are going to write into the HA node. So if it goes down, nothing is going to happen. So the second one will up and run. So that in this way we are going to get the high availability and parallel processing is takes place. So this is the advantage with the Hadoop 2.0 onwards. Okay, so now what we have in the master nodes, in Hadoop 2.0 we have a resource manager is available. So as usual, name node and high availability node. So generally some people will call it as a shared node or journal node, quorum node, right? We'll have the different nodes, but finally which will give you the high availability. So we call it as a HA node, high availability node. And right? So we have resource manager and application master. Yes.
So we call like hotfix, right? Is it like that? Here,
Which one?
like in Linux, when one server is down, we bring up the other server, right? So it is something similar
Yeah, it's
where one.
they correct. But here in the Linux, you use a RAID levels, right? So
Yeah.
we use a RAID here. There. Here we don't use a RAID. So instead of the RAID, we use a JBOD.
Okay.
And the same thing. So if you goes down, we will happen. And see here. So general again, the people will get into small confusion here. So the Hadoop cluster is not related to Oracle cluster. Okay, so here the cluster is the config is a different, right? So don't compare here this rack with the Oracle rack with Hadoop cluster. Okay, so
Okay.
both the concepts wise is the different one.
Okay.
Okay, and
Understood.
here, so if you define what is a cluster is a logical thing, right? It's not a physical. So logically grouping all these nodes together, we call it as a cluster. That's it. Okay, so now, so these are the masters we are having. Now what are the slaves? The slaves are the data nodes are the slaves, and then we use a node manager here. Okay, so this is available from the Hadoop 2.0 onwards. Okay, so now my question is, uh, so generally, so in interview, the first question, some people it's will ask you, so in a Hadoop cluster, how many name nodes we can have? In a Hadoop, the question is, in a Hadoop cluster, how many name nodes we can have? Rohit?
We can have secondary name node and we can have
Yes.
main name node.
Yeah. Before that, you should ask one question, whether you're talking about before 2.0 or after 2.0. Okay. So it's a before 2.0, we should have only one name node. And we can configure Hadoop 2.0 onwards. Now you can take as many number of name nodes. It's up to you now. Okay, so we can configure multiple name nodes in from 2.0 onwards, but before 2.0 we have only one name node is available. And how many job trackers are available in a cluster? Only one job tracker. Okay, so generally job tracker resides in a machine where name node is available. Okay, so and just remember here, uh, now in a Hadoop 2.0 onwards, now it's your choice, right? So what I'll do now, I store the data in SDFS. My data is available in a SDFS, and I'll run the job with a MapReduce, both available. So in Hadoop 2.0, you can use SDFS plus MapReduce, or you can use SDFS and Yarn. This is an optional, right? The user will have the choice, right? So where you want to run, so how you want to plan the cluster with a MapReduce or a Yarn, right? So you can use anyone. If you want to run the job with a MapReduce, then the job tracker and task tracker comes into the picture. So if you want to run the job under a Yarn environment, then you'll have a resource manager and node manager is available, right? So the job is executed with a resource manager and node manager. It's available in Hadoop 2.0 onwards. So, but preferably we use Hadoop before 2.0 is this one, and Hadoop 2.0 onwards we use this one. Okay, so this is what we call is a Hadoop daemons, right? So we always, right, so the data will be written to the data nodes and the reference written to the name node, and execution is done by the either job MapReduce or a Yarn. Okay, so any queries here, Rohit and Siddharth?
No.
Yeah. Okay, just 5 minutes, I'll end. And anything forget here, right? So we are running the job with the MapReduce, or we are running job with the resource manager. Okay, so now let me copy this. Right, it's a resource manager we have. right? So this is a 2.0 onwards. Okay, now see here, a Hadoop cluster may have one name node and multiple data nodes. See here, as a Hadoop developer, we should able to connect to the name node, right? We are nowhere related to the number of data nodes in a cluster. Okay, so it may have one data node or the 3 data nodes or 100 data nodes, because all the data nodes are referenced to a name node. So if you can able to connect to a name node, then it means we are connected to the data nodes. And then again, see here how many data nodes we're having, but we call together it as a one SDFS. It's a one cluster, right? So then, so this is all what we call is a SDFS. So don't differentiate like SDFS in data node 1, SDFS data node 2. This together in all the data nodes we call it as a SDFS, and my input data is available in all the data nodes but not in one data node, right? So if I am saying about the SDFS, that is SDFS in all the data nodes in a Hadoop cluster. Okay, so now, so when a client implemented a Hadoop, right, just 10 minutes, Siddharth Rohit, I'll end session in 10 minutes. Okay, so now if a client, generally we are habituated to the three-tier architecture. Three-tier architecture in the sense, this is what we work, right? A client, then a server and one database, correct? It's a three-tier architecture, so every project will follow this one. Now if a client is implementing Hadoop, doesn't mean that he's not migrating. Okay, it's not completely migrating, but Hadoop cluster is going to be the added infrastructure or additional infrastructure, right? So we are going to configure Hadoop cluster like this, right? So consider, so this is a Hadoop cluster with one name node, then 3 slaves, 3 data nodes are there. See the situation here. So in this particular client, in his production database, in these days he's getting 15 GB data in a day, right? So in the production database, his data limit, data size is 50 GB. Every day is getting 50 GB data. That is, in a month it reaches up to 15 terabytes of the data. So can he able to handle that much of data in the hard DBMS? Can he able to query the data? Right, it's very difficult. He can run a query, but he has to wait a lot of time to process the data, right? So now he cannot, this particular kind having this much of data size cannot able to handle the data into the RDBMS. So he don't have any alternate, simply has to move the data to the Hadoop cluster. Okay, so what you have to do, you have to move the data to the Hadoop cluster. So here in a Hadoop, we are having a component called Sqoop. We use Sqoop. So Sqoop is it's some application or some set of commands. What it will do now, this Sqoop will import the data, or it will transfer the data from the production database to a Hadoop cluster, right? So now whatever the database and whatever the tables in the tables, the data in the tables are written to the Hadoop cluster. But not all the clients will have the database, right? So you can see the Amazon, eBay, Facebook, Twitter, the data size is very big, much bigger. So they never handles the data with a database. Then what they'll do, they have some network attached storages, right? So they use some middle tier servers, right, where the data will be stored into NAS, network attached storages. Then now as a Hadoop, what we'll do now, I configure an agent. Okay, so I'm going to configure an agent. So here agent is a program. So what this agent will do, this agent resides into the server. This agent program resides into the server. As the data comes to the server, this agent will collect the data and write the data to the Hadoop cluster. Okay, so now if your data is available in a production database, or if your data is traveling through the servers, so here I use one component Flume, right? So what this Flume will do, this Flume will write the data to the Hadoop cluster. Either it's a database from the production database, data from production database, or a data is traveling through the servers. We are going to import the data. We are going to write the data. Now sometimes I need to do the real-time streaming, right? As the data is coming, I want to write into the Hadoop cluster. Yes, we can use the different streaming tools here. We have Starm is there, right? We have Kafka, right? So these are the streaming tools which will do the real-time streaming to the Hadoop cluster. So this way we are going to get the data to the Hadoop cluster. Suppose there is another client. So the client application is generating a lot of XML files, XML files, right? So where the data is available in a disk, right? Here it's not a server, it's not a database, but the client data is having into the disks. Now we can configure an FTP client here. What I'll do now, I configure an FTP, and through the FTP I can able to upload the file to the Hadoop cluster. So now see here, these are the different ways we are going to write the data to the Hadoop cluster, right? So it's a data or a server or a disk. We can able to write the data into the Hadoop cluster, right? Now, so we wrote the data. Once the data is available here, what we are going to do now, we have to process the data, right? So I need to run some queries. So how I'm going to process the data? So here I'm using MapReduce to process the data, or you can use a Yarn, or you can use a Spark under execution engine. I can write the queries in a Hive or a Pig or a Java, right, to process the data. Right now this is the data sources, and the data is available right now in a Hadoop cluster as HDFS. Then I'm going to process the data with these processing tools, right? The code I'll write here in these languages, and I execute with this execution environment, right? So right, I created some query, it generated some output. Then can I give this output directly to the client? No, I have to generate the reports, a graphical representation. That's I need to visualize the data. Then once the data is available here, then we are going to visualize the data with visualization tools. So what we use here to visualizing the data, we have a Tableau is available, or you can use Quick View, or you can use Zoom charts, right? We have Pentaho, right? So different visualization tools are available. So with these visualization tools, we are going to visualize the data, right? So that is from, so I wrote a query in a Hive, then I'll send the output of the Hive to this visualization tool, where I'm going to generate the reports. Fine. So I got the input data here available, and the data processing done here. The report generation is done. After that, now I want to store the data into the Hadoop cluster, right? I want to store the output into the Hadoop cluster. Then we configure NoSQL databases here. So in a NoSQL, we use HBase, or we have Cassandra, DynamoDB. So like NoSQL database are available. Then so after that, the processing the data, I can store the output here, or I can store from HBase to HDFS to HBase, or I can directly send the data from this cube to NoSQL database to store the data into the Hadoop cluster. So this is the database in a Hadoop cluster, that is a NoSQL, right, where we are going to store the data. Okay, clear now, Sid?
Yeah.
Right. Now see here, as a Hadoop developer, your job role involves the collecting the data to the Hadoop cluster and processing the data, right? Generally comes as a Hadoop developer job role, which we are going to learn. And we have Hadoop analyst available sometimes for specific clients. So what is Hadoop analyst? So the Hadoop analyst is going to process the data, right? He's going to process the data, and he's going to generate the visualization. So this generally comes as a Hadoop analyst job role. And every client will have a NoSQL developers. Like how you have a PLSQL developer, the same way we have a NoSQL developers are there, right? Which will work NoSQL. And we have Hadoop admin is available, right? So what Hadoop admin will do, the configuring the Hadoop cluster, right? Monitoring the Hadoop cluster, looking for the resources availability, right? So monitoring the health of the cluster. So these are the different job roles can be done by the Hadoop admin.